I was here when it all began. Well, not right here exactly. Actually, I was about 300 miles up that way, north-northwest from here. You have to keep moving. You don't really have any choice. Scavengers, thugs, gangs of very bad people. Folks you don't want to come across. Best just to keep your distance from most folks. Food, though, is the real consideration. Eat what you can find when you find it. I'll need to move on from here pretty soon. Only 3 cans of beans left, a couple cans of corn, and a few other cans that don't have a label on them. I won't know about them until I open them. The dry goods at this place, the rats and other critters got to a long time ago. But I was here when it all started. And I should have been able to see it coming. But I had a life to live just like everybody else. Job to go to, bills to pay, family to take care of. That all seems like a lifetime ago now. I really didn't pay much attention when the mandates were enforced. It didn't mean much to me. I put the mask on, got the shot and a few of the boosters. Had to if I wanted to keep my job. I got sick a couple of times after that, but nothing serious. And then a few years later, everybody just sort of forgot about all that. Just pretended like it never happened. I watched about as much of the news as anybody did. Saw the digital ID stuff coming, but I didn't think much about it. I went ahead, got my face scanned, and put the app on my phone. What else was I supposed to do? If I wouldn't have, I couldn't access my bank account without a ton of hassles. It made it easier to go to the store, the gas station, all that stuff. No need to carry around cash anymore. I just took what money I had at home to the bank and they deposited it in my CBDC account. No problems. I paid a little attention to some of the stuff I saw on the news. Not much, though. Like I said, I had a life to live. I watched as some of the protests swelled into the millions, or at least that's what some stations said. And I watched as they started to put people into jail just because their opinion went against what those in authority wanted them to think. I didn't think that was right. But I didn't post anything on social media. Why would I? What difference would any of my words have caused? There was always some kind of war going on. As usual, I didn't pay much attention to that stuff either. They were over there someplace. Nothing to do with me. But then I started to notice that a lot of the news stations were giving a lot of attention to the fact that Israel had been attacking Gaza for quite some time. Their reasons were their own. Like I said, it didn't have anything to do with me. Or at least, that's what I thought. But then I remembered something I had heard a few years before all that started up. That in many of the major cities across the planet, there were posters and signs put up with only these words on them, by those associated with a certain sect, a particular religious ideology within Judaism. The Messiah is here. Who they claimed him to be and why, I don't know. And really, to tell you the truth, back then I couldn't care less. But one of my buddies was a Christian back then. And although I really didn't pay a lot of attention to what he talked about much, I remembered a couple of verses from the Bible he mentioned. I don't know why, but they stuck in my head. They were from the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Funny how that works sometimes, isn't it? He said that certain people within Israel wanted this war to happen because it would bring into the open the one they believed to be their Messiah. But then he said that they wouldn't accept the truth that it would be the Antichrist. Instead, they would believe everything that he said, until it is too late for many of them. Back then, I didn't have a clue about what he was talking about. He told me this at the same time, that one of the reasons that so many, as they used to call them, migrants, were being accepted into many nations in Europe had a lot to do with this, that they were, at least a whole lot of them, Muslims. And some of them, although not all, detested the children of Israel in a way that most people couldn't imagine. I couldn't put two and two together back then, and I didn't even try. Why would I? All that stuff happening over there didn't have anything to do with me. But I remember him telling me this. When the Almighty draws those nations to attack Israel, by his mighty outstretched hand, he said, he will then destroy those attackers, and hundreds of thousands, if not more of them in those European nations, will in some way be a part of those that it will take 7 months to bury. It was too much for my brain to accept. And to tell you the truth, it all sounded like a bunch of baloney to me. So many people that it would take 7 months to bury the dead? No way. But then he started to go way off base. And almost every day since then, I've regretted in some way not listening to him. For calling him foolish, an idiot, delusional, and for telling him to leave me alone. What he said was way too far-fetched for even some fan of science fiction movies to believe. He said that when God destroyed all those lives, that it wouldn't be attributed to him, that Satan had a plan to deceive everyone on the planet at that moment. And like I said, I've heard some crazy theories in my time, but that one took the cake. He tried to tell me that beings would show up, beings in the guise of those not of this earth, aliens, believe it or not. That a spaceship, supposedly some craft not of this earth, would arrive. But they wouldn't be aliens, he said. They would be devils in human form, and that they would take credit for what God had done. Craziest stuff I ever heard in my life. So let me get this straight, I said. God's going to cause a bunch of people to go down to Israel and start up a big war. And then he's going to kill every one of those people that attacked them by some kind of miracle. And instead of people giving him the credit for doing so, Satan's going to try to take all the glory by showing up in a spaceship. Is that about right? And let me guess, that's when that rapture thing you're always talking about is going to happen, right? Like I said, the guy was off his rocker. At least that's what I thought back then. He said that it wouldn't be the Antichrist who steps out of that craft right then, though, but instead an emissary of the Antichrist, an associate of his, a devil, not the devil. And he would tell them that they had come to help all the humans with their problems, that they had been watching for decades and finally decided that it was time to offer assistance to mankind, but that the Antichrist guy wasn't going to show up for a few months yet, and for one reason. Because somewhere in that 7-month period of time when hundreds of thousands of people or more will need to be buried, the last of the chaff would need to be separated from the wheat. Then he told me that there were a lot more people who only professed to love Jesus Christ than there was who actually did, and that the Lord was going to give them one last chance to repent. I remember him saying that clear as day, just as if he said it yesterday. He said, though, that most of the people wouldn't, though. I don't recall the exact verse he quoted, but it had something to do with what he called the elect. I can only tell you this, that I wasn't one of those elect. A few months after that, the war he had been talking about actually happened. A bunch of nations got together and headed down towards Israel. Hundreds of thousands of troops and planes and everything other kind of war machine that you could imagine. Every station on the television was covering it. For once in my life, I was actually glued to that television, probably along with a few 100 million other people at the same time, from all around the world. I watched as something happened in the sky. I don't know what it was, but I had a pretty good guess. Because everything my buddy had said to me started to come into my mind. And I actually saw it happen on the TV. I saw something. I don't know exactly what it was, but the next thing I saw freaked me out more than anything in my life. Thousands upon thousands of dead bodies on the ground. And then a spaceship coming down out of the sky. It was happening right in front of my eyes, just like he said. You were hard-pressed to find anything on almost any channel or social media site that didn't have something to do with that for about 2 or 3 months after that day. They were either showing all the bodies being found and buried, or showing all those spaceships arriving. Hundreds of them, it seemed like. They were coming down in almost every nation. But then something started to happen. Something really bad. Some kind of virus, some kind of plague started to happen. And people weren't just dying here and there every once in a while. Hundreds of thousands of them were dropping like flies, almost every day. They said it was something that those supposed aliens had brought with them. Not on purpose, of course, but it turned out that's where it came from. And that's when the leader of the aliens, or at least what people thought were aliens, showed up in person. There wasn't a plane in the sky, unless it was a military one shooting down one that wasn't supposed to be up there. If people weren't running and screaming and hiding, they were dying. And that's when the bombs started to drop. That's the last thing I saw on the television. Nuclear bombs heading towards us and just about every other nation on the planet. If there was some kind of rapture, like my buddy talked about all those times, nobody would have noticed it. Unless somebody disappeared right in front of their eyes, like my wife and little granddaughter did. Just disappeared. The moment right before that supposed head alien showed up, which I know now without a single doubt is the Antichrist. I've got to go. I need to keep moving. Can't stay in one place too long. Pack up what I need to survive and keep heading south. Don't know why. I just need to keep moving.